Recording. So, Joaquin, also, what is going on in Ukraine? Let's speak in more details. So, recently, the Ukraine and the Kiev junta, the army, the National Guard battalion, the Nationalist battalion, they suffered a humiliating defeat under Debaltsevo, the place in Donetsk Oblast, I believe. And there was a cauldron. They were surrounded, encircled absolutely. Some of them surrendered, and some of them tried to break through, but they all failed. So after this defeat, I admire the strategic skills of Novorossiya generals, of Novorossiya commanders, and Kiev, on the other hand, have shown that there are more idiots in Kiev command than good generals. So, how is going to be? What is your predictions on the situation with Novorossiya, with the DPR, the LPR republics, the Kiev junta? How long junta will last? How long junta is going to last? As we know, economy is absolutely collapsing. It is falling apart. The hryvnia, it has tumbled records. It has tumbled maybe 400% or 500%. How it is going to be? How is the junta is going to survive? It's because I can see is time is working against junta.
Time is working against the junta, and we can see a change in the discourse coming from Europe, in particular France and Germany, as I have discussed for the past year, since really things got kicked into full gear a year ago with the coup. The government of Germany and France never really wanted things to go this way, and so now we can see that in the past year they've been going through a lot of stages and steps and internal fighting with various elites. Some are pro-American, some are pro-European, some are in favor even of Eurasianist integration, and so they have divisions in their ruling elite. So and these are being expressed in the media. Now we can see the Germans for the first time have published in their mainstream press some very harsh criticisms of the government of Ukraine, their inability to do things, to be responsible. They haven't been good with the money that they were lent. Not that anyone thought that they could be, but it's an interesting point to remark here that Europe has begun to shift the discourse, blaming Ukraine, Kiev government for things. Also remember, you will recall that the German foreign minister said said a month ago that sanctions against Kiev were not impossible either, that Kiev could also be sanctioned, that further sanctions might not be against Russia but might be against Ukraine. So we can see this, and of course I think that with the ceasefire and with the situation following the cauldron at Debaltseve, we can see, of course, that what is needed in Novorossiya is some time, some breathing time, some space. There are many damaged infrastructure, pipes, electrical wires. These need to be fixed and replaced, and the government is popular. The revolutionary governments are popular, and they have popular support. And to maintain that support, they must be showing that they want to make ceasefires, that they must be strategic, of course, but that they have peace in mind. They are not warmongers. They are not warlords. They are not profiting from the war. The people are suffering, and they need to show, and I think it's heartfelt, that they want to rebuild. And I think Poroshenko has also been placed into a situation. This has been my view. I've written publicly about this for the past 6 months, that Poroshenko also does not really want this war. And it's really, you have the pressures coming from Yatsenyuk, Turkhanov, but really beneath them and the real transmission belt of power is the U.S. support for the Zionist oligarchs and their funding, like Kolomoisky, and their funding, yes, hardcore, and their funding, of course, for Pravi sector and Svoboda-related armed groups. So this is really what's happening. Moving forward to a failed state, how the United States is trying to manage this situation. So I view it through this lens. I think that what we will see in the future depends what what Kiev decides to do. I think that the most of the most valuable parts of Donetsk and Lugansk are in the hands of the rebels. I think that the fight over Debaltsevo is not symbolic, of course. You have a major rail that connects Lugansk to Donetsk right there, and it is a central point. It is right in the cleavage of the two republics. And as I wrote about at the conclusion of the peace treaty earlier last month, in fact, that the plan, as much as they had a plan for Kiev, was to take that cleavage from the protrusion at Debaltsevo and push it forward all the way, if they could, to the border of Russia, and then separate the two republics and then secure the borders. They thought they got this from the peace treaty. I know that they don't really think that they did. Of course, we know if I can say the truth, the FSB controls the border between Novorossiya and Russia.
Sure.
And so I don't think that in their wildest dreams it will ever happen. They know that they cannot win this because of the free flow of volunteers and privately financed support and help from Russian citizens across the Russian Federation and the Eurasian Union, Kazakhstan, and so forth. People are coming in to help. Private people are pooling their money. Some have money. Some people all lump in together. We remember at the time of the collapse of the Soviet Union how many tanks and bazookas and armaments were privatized and they were sold off, and people collected them. Remember the time in the 90s when people were buying tanks? Yeah. Well, now we see this was being bragged about in the West as a sign that Russia was collapsing, and we can see this as a classic judo maneuver of turning a weakness into a strength. Now with all these privatized arms and the access to Volentorg, we can see that the rebels in Novorossiya are not starved for valuable equipment. The Russian government is not directly doing this. And so that's why Western powers have been so frustrated and unable to prove it. In fact, it's even a more clean operation than the Israeli and Saudi backing of ISIS and Al-Qaeda. So it's actually a step above because they're winning the information war as well. Yeah. So that's how I would summarize it.
This is going so smoothly, you know. I didn't expect it even to go this way, you know. But, you know, the West is trying to get proof. They fabricate proof. They give us the satellite images, satellite imagery from 1970s. It's all black and white. It's all blurred. It's just you can't understand anything and you can't see anything. It's all blurred. Where is modern color, 3D, zoom into the street level? This is all possible with modern satellite technologies. What the hell are they pushing? Does this make any sense?
Right. Yeah, I mean, the thing is that they, you know, there are, you know, the honest truth being that there's a lot of ways to get things across the border without being detected, but they are so frustrated that they can't find them. But what's so funny is that the U.S. cannot say that it is private NGOs and private institutions. They cannot say that it's private Russian citizens through charities, through Volentorg, through volunteers are actually helping this. They cannot say this. They cannot call on Russia to control their own citizens to stop them from helping, because then it's very simple what can be said. Okay, then you in America must shut down the mosques. You in the West must shut down the mosques where you actually give money to the radical imams who recruit the fighters to go to Syria and to join ISIS or Al-Qaeda.
Yeah.
They cannot do. You see, it's a similar mechanism, and so the West cannot call out Russia for doing something which the West has been doing with less success.
Yeah, it's hypocritical.
It's hypocritical, and not that hypocrisy is beyond them, but I can see
they are
that
beyond hypocrisy.
they are beyond hypocrisy, and so the real struggle is over the direction of Europe. Of course, the Eurasian project, of course, is ultimately to build a large integration sphere from Iberia to Siberia, and from Lisbon to Vladivostok. And we can see that this is not going to happen if Europe is in the hands of the Atlanticists. So this is the present issue. This is really what's going on. It's not just about Ukraine. This is about a completely different way of alignment of the world powers.
Yeah, and I see a lot of these Western trolls on the internet in the comments on the video. They say, "Oh, Russian T-70, T-72B3, Russia supplies, Russia supplies." Yeah, and I say, I post comments, guys, give me proof that Russia supplied this tank. Do you have any imagery or satellite? Do you have any video of it crossing the borders? Please, guys, if you have no proof, you can say whatever you want. I can say how it does appear there. It's teleportation, if you will.
Right, right. I mean, you look at all you have to do. I mean, there were at the start of this conflict, we remember that Ukraine had no military even at the start. I mean, they could not mobilize anybody back at the end of May or the beginning of June when they began the so-called ATO in the east. Private individuals, private oligarchs had to put together $5 million, 5 million euros to put gas in the tanks of the cars and the tanks, to put gas to get there. I mean, they couldn't mobilize. They literally didn't have the fuel to mobilize their own army, privately funded from the start. Then they sent that army over there, and half of them defected and switched sides, and all that equipment and all those personnel went over to the sides of the rebels. And we can see that that was only one instance at the beginning. It was several different instances, but that was only one chapter. One must imagine that still within certain sectors of the Ukrainian military are still Russian assets. And if they really were to do something beyond stupid, I think that it would backfire so completely. They actually lost this already. World powers already recognize this. The American effort to destabilize Russia through Ukraine has failed. This is similar, what we have seen with Minsk II is very similar to a year ago in 2013, September, when the U.S. backed off of Syria. We remember they tried to do the chemical weapons false flag. There was a nun, Sister Miriam, I believe, who exposed this.
Yes, Mother Agnes Miriam.
Mother Agnes is what it was.
Yes, I know. I know her because of the Syrian girl.
Yes.
That pretty.
That's who it was, right?
Yeah, that good-looking blogger from Australia, but she is Syrian. Okay, so and some say Putin is trying to start World War III, but if he really wanted to start World War III, when this chemical weapons false flag occurred in Syria, and the US and Israel sent their military vessels, their naval forces to Syria, Putin could have said something. He could have said, "Yeah, come on in. We will support Assad and we will fight you here and now. Come on in." Or in Ukraine, when then the war started, or after the Odessa provocation, when the House of Trade Unions burned, Putin could have said, "This is despicable. I'm going to defend Russians. I will send troops to Ukraine and I will crush this junta, the Kiev junta."
Yeah, they could have. Look, the Russia could also look at countries like in Poland or Czechoslovakia. Russia could have used their NGOs to fund their own color revolution and install puppet. Imagine if Russia had staged the color revolution in Poland, and then the day after the government declares that the NATO bases must evict and must be handed over to Russia. I mean, this is what they attempted to do in Crimea. It was really the U.S. that tried to provoke a war with Russia, but I think that they were surprised, quite frankly. I think the U.S. did not expect Crimea to have a vote and go over to Russia so quickly, and for it to be stabilized and secured without any hesitation, without any stumblings along the way. I think this happened so fast they couldn't react. I think they were expecting Russia to engage in diplomacy and to make a protest at the UN and to go into negotiations and to talk about Crimea. Meanwhile, the U.S. would have been building up their naval powers in Crimea, occupying the base, etc., etc. So I think that they completely miscalculated Russian resolve, and I think that military books will be writing about the incident of Crimea for a long time to come.
Okay, so the Western powers are realizing that they failed to destabilize Russia through Ukraine, or to use Ukraine as a ram against Russia,
Right.
to turn it into a rabid bulldog to set them on Russia. So, how is this gonna end? Your prediction? Will Kiev junta be overthrown and the pro-Russian government place instead, or will we somehow inherit Poroshenko? You see, I absolutely despise and hate Poroshenko.
Right, right. And I know I've said that
Give
he
me a
will
gun, give
inherit
me a handgun,
Poroshenko.
give me a
Well, look,
handgun. I
yeah,
put a
look,
bullet in his
yeah,
head.
the man himself is right despicable. So you'd have to have some kind of new election. But what I think that this would include, and I'm a realist, right? And I look at how the deals get made. I don't try to speak from my heart about what I think will happen, because that's how people make mistakes in their
Yeah,
analysis.
yeah.
What I think most realistically could happen is that Poroshenko will be absolved. Okay,
Okay,
he will be given a free pass for everything that happened while he was president. That everything that happened, he will never be prosecuted for it by the EU, UN, or Russia. He will never be at The Hague for that type of thing, right? That's the deal. And in return, he has to do what he can to hold Ukraine together. He has to try to extract the powers that Turchinov was given over the military. He needs to try to balance those powers away from Turchinov. He needs to resist Kolomoisky and the Pravi sector. I think the truth is that to the extent that he had some control in the military, I think that Poroshenko did attack Pravi sector already. I think that Pravi sector was attacked by Ukrainian army regular already, and I think that Russian advisors, through the joint patrols of the OSCE, where Russian military advisors are working daily through the OSCE with Ukrainian military generals as we speak, and going back since September, is when we saw the big change. I think that history will look and see that the first way that the first cauldrons last summer were resolved was really the beginning of the end. And really, this last cauldron in Devil's Devo is probably the striking defeat which undid Ukraine as a military power altogether. That does not mean the U.S. is over. I think that's your real question. I think the U.S. will try to do something independently. It will try to use Poland and Romania separate from the EU, simply to destabilize things. Their big goal was to use Ukraine as a launching pad to destabilize Russia. They wanted to have a Russian spring, just like there was a Ukraine spring. There's a lot of drama that surrounds accusations that Strelkov was involved in this. I'm not interested in that drama. That's not how history happens. That's not who makes the decisions. That's never how things work out. I don't know why people focus on Strelkov. These individuals don't make policy. History does not revolve around them. What I really think is happening now is that the Kiev junta is faced at a crossroads where the U.S., now seeing that they cannot destabilize Russia, still has the power to destabilize Ukraine further and further. If they can create a perpetual human catastrophe, if they can create a perpetual set of destruction, then as you understand, my economy improves if I improve in real terms, but I also improve relative to yours if I can destroy you. So Ukraine was such an important part of the regional economy. Its biggest partner was Russia, and so therefore Russia can be hurt by destroying Ukraine, and of course at the expense of innocent people and a lot of willing idiots. But that's how history works out. I think the U.S. still would like to see Kiev destroyed. I think the United States would even like to see Ukraine break apart, but not in a way that creates resolution or a way that solves it, but rather we will see an increase in Galician nationalism. We will see a division within the Ukrainian identity between patriotic Ukrainians who might understand, who might believe that they are something called Ukrainian, separate from Galicians in the West, who also will be able to create problems in Poland. As we know, Krakow is technically part of the old Galician kingdom, and Galicia today is sitting both in Poland and in Ukraine, and we know that the Pravi sector is actually an ethnic Galician movement pretending to be some fake thing called Ukrainian. Galician is a real identity. There was never such a thing as Ukrainian. Ukraine is the place where Russians, Transcarpathians, and Galicians all live.
And Ukrainian was essentially created and promoted and spinned out by Austro-Hungary.
Yes, it was propped up. They used a similar tactic that Austro-Hungary used a similar tactic on other Catholic populations, on Czechs, on Galicians, and on Croatians, where they used Catholic identity to turn Slavs against Slavs. In other words, they have no respect for Slavs, but if they can use Catholic Slavs to get killed and to go kill other Slavs, then they have saved themselves the effort of having to do it themselves.
Maybe it's something like the West used to divide Muslims, Arabs between Shias and Sunnis.
It's very, very similar.
Yeah.
It's very similar. This is, but what's interesting is that these Catholic and Orthodox divisions were under control during the Soviet period because a secular mission was developed. There are criticisms of this secular mission, which I also respect.
Yeah,
but at the same time,
like Soviet Union was like Saddam in Iraq. Under Saddam,
there you go. Right.
No sectarian division. Before the civil war in Syria, no sectarian division.
There you go. Yes, Pan-Arabism is rooted in a social construction which sought, at least in theory, to provide different types of collaboration and integration of people of different faiths and ethnic historical backgrounds to some success. Of course, foreign powers can always exploit the divisions, can always amplify them. They can even brainwash whole sections of a population who may have rightly been oppressed to turn against others in the same federation. We saw this happen in Yugoslavia. We saw this happen in Iraq with Sunnis and Shias, now in Syria with the same.
Yeah.
And of course in Ukraine between the three-way, the Ukrainian Orthodox autocephalous split from the Moscow Patriarchate. You have the Orthodox that are loyal to the Moscow Patriarchate, and then of course you have the Greek Catholics who pretend to be Orthodox in a way. Like if you went to a Greek Catholic church, you would think you were at a Orthodox church, but it's actually Catholic. It's very strange.
Yeah, very strange. Yeah.
So that's it in a nutshell.
Okay, yeah, that's it. Okay, Joaquin, it was a pleasure to interview you. That's it. That's wrap. Okay.
Great. Thank you for having me. I'm glad we talked about this, and I will see you soon.
Yeah, that was a hell of an interview. Okay, bye. See you soon.
Bye.